My name is Rupali Gupte. I'm a member of the Collective Research Initiatives Trust, which is a group of architects, urbanists, and artists to work together. With me are my colleagues here, Prasad Shetty, and our local curator, Prasad Khanolkar. So just going to get the clicker here. So I must also warn you that it's impossible to talk about the project in 15 minutes. So I really encourage you to go downstairs and take a look at the work that we presented. Because really, I mean, the work is thick and it's layered, and you can see many more things as you can spend 5 minutes, but you can spend 5 hours looking at the work. So I really encourage you to go down. To begin with the project, the name, we've titled this Being Nicely Messy. Discussing Mumbai's future urban mobility. Now, what we want to do is we want to open up all these three terms: Mumbai, future, and mobility. In the case of Mumbai, I think it's really important to understand that in the last couple of decades, while the population of the city has not really gone up, the movement in the city has drastically increased. So we'd see train travel going up by 66% and vehicles going up by 181%. And why is that happening? That's happening because the nature of work in the city has changed completely. For example, the traditional assembly line has now fragmented. The city has become a city of entrepreneurs. And this movement is now, like we see below here, fragmented, splintered all over the city, and completely restructured movement patterns in the city. And really, this is the city of entrepreneurs, and you'll see multiple of these entrepreneurs who are engaged in all kinds of work. These entrepreneurs, and this is another important thesis that we have, occupy the city in this form of blur. The blur is the urban form of the city. It's this messy city, and that is really important to understand. And these entrepreneurs now occupy this blur, these boundaries in innovative ways. And so what the blur also allows is for people to inhabit city space through complex occupancy patterns. Okay? And the other thing that the blur does is that it has very high transactional capacities. So if we see this drawing to your right here and well here, is that you have a slum which is multi-storied, and you have a grocery shop below, an embroidery unit above, a worker's dorm, a community praying space below, and then a space which rents out these huge utensils which you can rent for big festivals, for community cooking. So really, this is what we're interested in, is that there is a logic of the city. The city has a certain logic which creates intensities, and that has very high transactional capacities, and that generates its own culture. So how do we understand future in this context? And what we did is really try to understand the future through 9 typological sites in the city, right from the south of Mumbai, which is the central business district, to the north, which is the periphery of the city. And what we understood is that there is no future. The city really is formed out of multiple urban conditions. It's like a froth. You have these multiple bubbles which form the logic of the city, and each of these conditions has a different future, depending on who is imagining it. So you have multiple futures. It's impossible to think of one future. And so what we did is we went ahead and projected the futures of each of these conditions. And we found these many more bubbles that were emerging out of these imaginations of what these futures are. And you'll see below in the exhibition space, we have these poles in the middle of the space, which are really talking about these micro-environments that you will experience of what these future cities are heading towards. And some of these are the city of entrepreneurship, the city of the old, the city of cleansed waterfronts, city of information utopias. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but let me go ahead and explain what some of these are. So when we understand that these are multiple cities and multiple futures, we also understand that there are some patterns that are emerging. Okay, that there are 4 broad trajectories that we understand are emerging of what the future is going to be. And one of these trajectories is that of high polarization. So this blur that we're talking about, which has high transactional capacities, is really going to be diffused in the future. It's going to be about hard boundaries, about these kind of very hard edges between communities, which is going to take away some of these transactional capacities that we see today. The other thing, so basically when we see this diagram here, as the degree of blur reduces, transactional capacities increase, okay, and the resources reduce. So towards the incremental settlements, and then towards the skyscraping apartments, we'll see that resources increase, the blur reduces, but transactional capacities also plummet. And this is really the emerging urban form, where we see the blur getting reduced, transactional capacities getting reduced, but also these kind of very rigid boundaries between the enclaves of the rich and the colonies of the poor. And so what we see is the second trajectory. The second trajectory is that of economic restructuring. What we're going to see in the future is that more and more our traditional economic structures of finance and commerce are declining, and what is emerging is enterprises related to culture, environment, and old age. And this is what we're going to see in the future. This is what we see over here is the finance. This is where we are right now, finance, commerce, and administration. And the future is now going to be about culture, environment, and health. And this is really because, one, you're losing these proximities. We don't need proximities anymore. The other thing is that we have Mumbai is going to take away, markets from Mumbai are going to go away to other places. And third, really, the important thing is that the competitive advantage in the city is really in its cultural and environmental assets, its health industry, and its film industry. The third trajectory that we understand is that there's going to be a heightened sense of environmental concerns that are emerging, but these environmental concerns, as we document here, are not only in terms of crisis, but also in terms of a fad and an enterprise that are going to be emerging in the future. And the fourth last trajectory that we locate is that the city is going to be the city of the old. Okay? So if we look at this diagram again, this is the age pyramid. We'll see the bulge right now much lower. It's a younger city. But in the next couple of years, the bulge is going to go higher, and it's going to be the city of the old. Okay? So these are the four broad trajectories that we sum up. High polarization, loss of transactional capacities, the culture industry increasing, commerce and finance, the business processing outsourcing centers, which is this kind of center of the economy today, plummeting. We have the environmental concerns which are rising, demography, population is dropping, and the average age is increasing. So how do we understand mobility in this context? Okay? What we're saying, and this is again the thesis that CRIT puts out, is that for us, mobility is not transportation alone. Because when we understand transportation, transportation is embedded in multiple processes that shape the city. And if we look at transportation alone, it really generates mega projects that displace the logic of the city. So for example, this is a road that is passing through this through the slum, and we'll see that the road is cut, people are displaced. So it's impossible to think of one project. Okay? So then how do we understand it? We understand the city as a complex ecosystem of geographies, legislations, claims, powers, kinships, friendships, and information. And again, this is something that you'll see below, this kind of text collage that we've created of what this complex ecosystem of the city is. And within this, we understand mobility as a twofold concept. One, that mobility is not only transportation, but that it is movements of people in this transforming urban context, where we understand movements in terms of access, migration, gentrification, class movement. And the other important thing that we understand is that mobility is really opened up to understand that it's the verb mobilize. To mobilize, to be able to navigate in this complex ecosystem, to be able to then construct one's own future, okay, one's own path for the future. And then what is Mumbai's future mobility? We understand if the futures are not one, if there are multiple futures, it is impossible to think of it as one project and impossible to think of it as one vision. And so what we do then is make multiple tools, devise multiple tools to then engage in this future, which different people can use to manipulate their own futures, to sort of participate in their own futures. So it's not about one utopia anymore. And so what are these tools doing? These tools are blurring the social and physical edges between communities and allowing high transactional capacities. The tools are creating and harnessing opportunities for the future. 3, they're engaging in the environmental crisis that we've projected. And then the 4th is these are tools for the people to engage in the city of the old, to allow the old to live in dignity. So if we look at, again, just going back to some of these, what these tools are several. There are different kinds of tools. One is a series of catalogs for new enterprises, where we're looking at devising enterprises for 2030. What could people do in 2030? And these are catalogs that we'll see downstairs. There is catalogs for entrepreneurship paraphernalia. How do entrepreneurs engage in the future? And these are tools that we designed for these. Catalogs for retrofitting bridges and skywalks. So I'm going to show you some of these. Again, it's impossible to go through all of them right now because we don't have a lot of time. But so to give you some examples, this is the catalog for enterprises, Enterprises 2030, where we design what these enterprises could be in 2030. This is actually, so there's 2 things we have. We have a set of shelves, which are these tools, and we have 4 video monitors where we test out these tools, okay? So this is where one of the entrepreneurship catalogs is tested out. It's actually a love story that unfolds at the edge of the city, where agents are involved in kind of providing high transactional capacities in a kind of highly securitized space. And then this is the catalog for retrofitting waterfront edges. Again, this is generating series of programs to then intervene in a context where diversity is going to get reduced. There's going to be high polarization. So what are the various kind of edges that we're going to now develop for the waterfronts? And this is it's a video which then activates one of the tools, which is the stilt, the strategy of the stilt that becomes a new boundary, which allows various programs to emerge at the same, to exist at the same time. This is the catalog for enterprise paraphernalia, the kind of an astrologer's seat, a kind of ladder, a painter's ladder come workbench, a bookseller's book-selling section, a kind of suitcase shops that can be mobilized for, they become standalone shops, they become seats. And then this is a series of books that we've made, books for greening vertical neighborhoods in a context where high consumption is going to change the patterns of apartment living. And then we have a catalog for retrofitting skywalks. So skywalks are these big mega projects that you see in the city. There are 55 of them, sometimes built in places that you don't require. So these are really retrofitting these skywalks. So you have a kind of trapezoidal staircase that gets attached to it, a Ferris wheel storage for mobile shop vendors to use it in the nights, catalog for retrofitting skywalks, so this kind of balcony that gets attached to the skywalk, which becomes a new public space. And you'll see this video below, the video that runs. There's no time for me to run these videos, but you'll see some of these as possibilities. Again, new programs to intervene in the future. Catalogs for boundary walls. How do you actually start looking at boundary walls to remove this kind of, to actually increase the blur? Okay, Bombay Biodiversity Guide, really this kind of guide which looks at the rich biodiversity of Mumbai. Senior City, a catalog that looks at how seniors could then intervene with new institutions, new programs, new enterprises, infrastructures for the future. A redevelopment book, which were in a context of very high redevelopment that is going on, a book which becomes then a checklist for what you would do for redeveloping when your property is getting redeveloped. Time, you'll see a lot of clocks. Okay, clocks that then don't work with this linear time, but work with multiple rhythms of the city. A catalog for retrofitting old settlements. This is a video that you'll see that where one of the old settlements is retrofitted with this new skin that emerges on the periphery that is not only used for structural support and fire escapes, but also becomes this new transactional skin of the building. So really to end, I'm going to end here, but that the fact that mobility for us is really about these multiple futures. It's not possible to think of one vision, but it's really important for us to devise tools to intervene which different people can use and mobilize their own futures. Okay? And what we want to do ahead with this is really that one, today, planning process is it's continuing in Mumbai. It's at the brink. There's a new kind of planning process that has started, and we want to inform this planning process because otherwise, it's all about mega projects. The second thing we want to do is develop these tools further to sort of really resolve them much further. And the third one is to take up one of these tools and at least demonstrate them in the city. Thank you.